The graveyard shift had never been Helena Duarte's favorite, but it was the only one that fit her reality. As she pushed the cleaning cart through the glass corridors of the Manhattan skyscraper, she kept her gaze down, avoiding drawing attention. Not that anyone paid attention to cleaning ladies, not in that building, where each room was worth more than her entire working life. Helena had been working hard ever since she arrived in the United States 3 years earlier, fleeing a life that had become unbearable in Texas after her husband abandoned her and left behind a debt. The big city wasn't welcoming, but it offered something crucial: anonymity, and with luck, opportunity. On that particularly cold morning, the excessive air conditioning seemed to penetrate her thin uniform. She scrubbed the marble floor with mechanical movements, trying to ignore the fatigue weighing on her body. The building was almost empty, except for the security guards and a few employees who boasted about working late, as if overwork were a badge of honor. What Helena didn't know was that night she wasn't as invisible as she thought. On the 48th floor, Ethan Vance, CEO of Vance Corporation, gazed at the illuminated city through the panoramic windows of the main office. At 38, he was known for turning everything he touched into gold. Bankrupt companies, promising startups, risky investments. His public image was impeccable, confident, calculating, unwavering. But that night was different. He had just received a confidential financial report that jeopardized not only his company, but his reputation. It wasn't just money, it was his legacy, and the person he suspected of being behind the threat wasn't a competitor, but someone within his own company. Ethan rubbed his temples, weighed down by the burden of decisions that needed to be made quickly. He was alone in the office, or at least he thought he was. That's when he heard the soft sound of wheels, followed by light footsteps. "Excuse me, sir," Helena murmured, realizing that the meeting room next to the office was still occupied. She had entered by mistake, thinking everyone had already left. "Ethan will keep it, and he will live." Her hair was hastily tied back, her expression tired, her hands trembling as she gripped the mop. An employee the entire company wouldn't recognize or name. But there was something in her gaze, a mixture of determination and fragility, that caught his attention unexpectedly. "You can continue," Ethan said, his voice firm but not hostile. Helena lowered her head and began to clean discreetly, trying not to think about the embarrassment. But Ethan continued watching, intrigued. It wasn't typical of him to pay attention to employees so far removed from his circle. He usually only saw people in important positions, people who could offer him something. But there was something different about how Helena moved. Quick, efficient, as if every second was meticulously calculated so as not to waste time. He noticed something else. She was limping slightly, not noticeably but perceptible enough to someone paying close attention. "Are you hurt?" he asked, surprising even himself. Helena froze. She wasn't used to answers, much less questions, coming from someone like him. "I just got a little tired today, sir. Nothing serious." But there was something in the tone. It wasn't just tiredness. It was pain. Real pain. Physical or emotional, it's hard to tell. Ethan returned to his desk, but remained attentive, questioning why he was devoting mental time to this. When Helena finished and left the room, she thought she would never see that man again. Being seen by him for a few seconds meant nothing in a building like that. Or at least, that's what she thought. The next day, while Helena was cleaning the ground floor lobby, 2 security guards approached. She felt her heart race, not because she was doing anything wrong, but because she always expected the worst from any approach by authority. "Helena Duarte?" one of them asked. Yes, Mr. Vance would like to speak with you." The sentence threw her stomach to the ground. The CEO didn't hire cleaning ladies for his office. In fact, no CEO did. Unless trouble was on the horizon. Helena rode the elevator silently, each floor increasing her nervousness. On the 48th floor, she was led to the office where she had been the previous night. Ethan stood by the window, observing the city as if he controlled it. "Come in," he said, without turning around. Helena entered, clutching the cleaning cloth as if for defense. Ethan finally turned to her, no trace of arrogance, just cold analysis, the same analysis he used to evaluate multi-million-dollar investments. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. "About 8 months, sir." "And do you always work at night?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. Helena tried to find some logic in that conversation, but there wasn't any. And the more Ethan observed her, the more he felt that this ordinary woman carried something extraordinary within her, something he couldn't name, but that seemed useful or dangerous. He didn't know yet. Still, there was a decision that needed to be made, a decision that no one could have predicted, and this would be just the first of many nights in which Helena and Ethan's paths would cross in an unlikely and transformative way. Vance Corporation was practically a city of its own within Manhattan, a modern complex of glass and steel, where executives hurried about and each department functioned like a meticulously calculated cog in a machine. For those who worked there, the atmosphere was one of constant competition, as if every glance carried silent evaluations and every gesture was observed. For Helena, it was just a scene that needed cleaning. But that week, her presence began to be slightly more noticed, not by the cleaning crew, but by people who had never paid attention to her before. Ethan, despite trying to ignore the unexpected interest, had spent part of the morning mentally revisiting his encounter with the cleaning lady. He knew his curiosity was pointless. In his routine, emotions were distractions. But something about her, the way she seemed to carry the weight of the world without missing a beat, stirred his instincts. Ethan wasn't the type of man who was easily charmed. Raised in a family that valued results over affection, he had learned early on to shield his emotions. The company was his territory, his life. The few friends he had were strategic allies, and since his father's death 5 years earlier, Ethan had become even more rigid, distrustful, and ruthless. His mother lived in another state, reclusive. His romantic relationships were brief and calculated, and his reputation as a cold business genius only grew. Meanwhile, Helena carried profound stories in every gesture. Born in a small town in rural Texas, she had grown up amidst financial hardship, unstable jobs, and seemingly endless family responsibilities. Her marriage, a desperate attempt at stability, had turned into a nightmare of manipulation and accumulated debts by her ex-husband, who had disappeared without a trace. When she arrived in New York, she brought with her only a suitcase of clothes and the silent promise to start over. Her English was still hesitant, but sufficient. She rented a small room in Brooklyn, where she shared a bathroom with 2 other women. The city was tough, noisy, but strangely liberating. There, no one knew her story. No one judged her. No one expected anything from her except that she work, and she was working. At the company, few employees knew her name, but everyone recognized her as the fastest, or the one who never misses work. Her efficiency had never earned her praise. There was no room for that in that environment, but it had guaranteed her continued employment. And, for Helena, that was enough. In the days following the meeting with Ethan, rumors began to circulate through the hallways, not about her specifically, but about the CEO. He seemed more introspective than usual, more rigid in meetings. Some directors commented that he was about to announce a billion-dollar merger. Others believed that an internal scandal might be about to come to light. The atmosphere was one of controlled tension. In the finance department, Mark Reynolds, the operations director, observed everything with excessive attention. He was known among the employees for his voracious ambition and his ability to manipulate situations to his advantage. Always elegant, with a smile that never reached his eyes, Mark was the type who would debut new suits before receiving bonuses, and he had another, even more notorious characteristic, a deep envy of the power Ethan wielded. Mark had noticed that the CEO was acting more reserved, as if he were keeping something important to himself, and that bothered him, because nothing irritated a man like him more than not being at the center of the decision-making process. Helena continued her work as usual, though now with a cautious outlook. Ethan's sudden invitation had cast a shadow of doubt in her mind. It was rare for superiors to show interest in someone like her, and it rarely meant anything good. On Thursday night, while organizing supplies in the 20th floor storage room, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Laura Whitman, the facilities manager in charge of the cleaning staff. A pragmatic woman, inflexible and always too busy for long conversations. "Helena," she said, clipboard in hand, "I received a request this morning directly from the executive floor." Helena frowned. "Order?" "Yes, it seems Mr. Vance has requested that you personally clean his floor every night." Helena almost dropped the cloth she was holding. "But I already rotate shifts with the other employees. There's no reason to—" "Don't ask me why," Laura interrupted curtly. "I'm just letting you know. Starting tomorrow, you're going straight to the 48th floor. They want you there." The manager left without explanation, leaving Helena alone with the echo of her own uncertainties. The next day, when he arrived on the executive floor, he found an atmosphere different from the rest of the building. The silence was absolute, the lighting warmer, the decorations minimalist and expensive. It was like entering another world. While cleaning the reception area, she noticed she was being discreetly observed by Olivia Harper, Ethan's personal assistant. Young, extremely competent and always impeccably dressed, Olivia was known for her loyalty to the CEO and for her natural distrust of anyone new who approached him. "You're Helena, right?" Olivia asked with a smile that was too polite to be genuine. "Yes, ma'am. You need to be very careful with this flooring. Any excess product can make it dull." "Sure, I know how to handle him." Olivia watched for another moment, assessing Helena's each movement as if she were measuring invisible risks. Inside the office, Ethan watched the scene from a distance. He didn't intervene. He didn't say anything. But he observed everything with the precision of someone who left nothing to chance. Because no matter how hard he tried to ignore it, he knew there was something about Helena that he still needed to understand, and when he understood, it might be too late to turn back. The following days marked a silent change on the 48th floor. Helena's presence, even discreet, began to be noticed by people who would normally ignore someone like her. Part of this was due to the simple fact that, in that controlled environment, any change, even a cleaning lady who became a constant figure, sparked speculation. But something deeper was going on. That Monday night, the atmosphere on the executive floor was especially tense. The lights in Ethan's office remained on, while the other rooms were gradually emptied. Helena, accustomed to the solitude of the early morning hours, immediately noticed the difference in the atmosphere. The heavy silence, the hurried footsteps of the few directors still circulating, the worried look of Assistant Olivia, everything indicated that something important was underway, and she would find out in the worst possible way. While cleaning the outside area of the main meeting room, Helena heard loud voices coming from inside. The door wasn't completely closed, and the sound echoed down the silent hallway. "Do you have any idea what this whole means, Ethan?" It was Mark Reynolds' voice, thick with barely contained irritation. "If this gets out of here, we're talking about a catastrophic fall. The media only needs one detail to turn this into a scandal." "I know what we're talking about," Ethan replied firmly, "and I'm dealing with the situation. With facts, not panic." Helena froze. She didn't want to hear any of it. This wasn't her place, but before she could move away, something fell into the room, a heavy object, followed by the sound of paper being dragged. "If this is the case, then why don't we have the name of the person responsible yet?" Mark stepped forward. "Someone leaked that information, someone with inside access, and you know that puts us all at risk." Silence. Helena tried to take a step back, but her cleaning cart hit the wall, producing a metallic sound, low but enough. The door opened with a sudden movement. Mark appeared first. His sharp eyes immediately landed on her, assessing, judging. "What are you doing here?" he asked in a hostile tone. Helena instinctively recoiled. "Just cleaning, sir, as always." Ethan appeared behind him, calmer but equally alert. "Helena, it's all right." His voice was neutral but firm. "You can continue your work." Mark narrowed his eyes, displeased with the CEO's intervention. "Ethan, don't you think that's risky?" "I said everything's fine," Ethan cut in curtly, ending any attempt at discussion. Mark cast one last suspicious glance and left the hallway with heavy steps. Helena took a deep breath. Her stomach tightened. Her hands trembled. She felt like she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and for the first time since he had started there, he felt fear. The following hours were tense. Ethan remained in his office, and Helena avoided getting close to him as much as possible. But whenever she had to walk down the hallway, she felt Olivia's gaze following her every move. The personal assistant seemed to sense trouble in her presence, and she wasn't about to hide it. As Helena headed towards the service elevator, ready to leave, a voice stopped her. "Helena!" She turned around. Ethan approached with a serious expression, but not aggressive. "I apologize for Mark's behavior," he said. "He's under a lot of pressure. He shouldn't have spoken to you that way." Helena swallowed hard. "Don't worry, sir, I'm used to it." "You shouldn't be here," Ethan said almost to himself. There was an awkward pause. He seemed to want to say something more, but he held back. "Just keep doing your job as usual," he added. "We're going through a delicate time here." She nodded, trying not to show how much those words affected her. "Good evening, Mr. Vance." "Good evening, Helena." She stepped into the elevator. Ethan stood there, watching the doors close, his face heavy with thoughts he wasn't yet ready to confront. The next day, the tension increased. Mark paced the hallways with a stormy expression, speaking quietly to directors, gathering documents, pressuring teams. Everyone knew something bad was about to happen, but no one knew exactly what. And amidst all this, Helena began to feel more constant stares, muffled comments, employees whispering when she entered the room. They weren't about her per se, not yet, but about the growing atmosphere of suspicion, until late at night the conflict suddenly emerged. While cleaning the hallway outside the finance department, she heard quick footsteps, and Mark appeared, holding a folder full of reports. He saw her, paused for a second, and then approached. "Did you pass by here last night?" he asked directly, without beating around the bush. Helena swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. I clean this floor every night." "And he went into the meeting room?" "No, sir. The door was ajar, but I stayed outside." Mark tilted his head, studying her face. "He is sure?" She gripped the edge of the stroller. "Absolutely." Mark gave a half-smile, the kind of smile that didn't bode well. Okay, I was just asking." He walked away, but Helena realized it immediately. He hadn't believed her. And worse, it seemed he had found an opportunity there. The night ended with Helena feeling the weight of the situation like a tight rope around her chest, an unsettling premonition, as if she were being pulled into a problem that wasn't hers, but that somehow included her. As she left the building, Ethan watched her from afar, from inside the dark room. Unseen. Without understanding why, among so many pieces, she seemed to become an important part of the chessboard. But the conflict was only beginning, and its impact would be far greater than either of them could have imagined. The week unfolded like a silent storm within Vance Corporation. Everyone sensed something was wrong, but no one knew exactly what. It was like walking on glass. Every step could shatter a shard. Helena, for her part, felt increasingly pressured by forces she didn't fully understand. She didn't want to get involved with any of it. All she wanted was to keep her job, pay the rent, survive. But the more she tried to go unnoticed, the more she seemed to be seen. One of the reasons was that, in recent days, Olivia had been observing her every move with growing suspicion. Although she maintained a professional demeanor, Helena felt the weight of that gaze on the back of her neck, assessing, mentally noting something she was unable to decipher. Ethan realized this as well, though he didn't comment on it. His world was crumbling with the internal investigation into the financial information leak. Before him were numbers that didn't add up, unusual system accesses, altered reports, and no culprit in sight. Behind all the tension, subplots emerged, taking root, albeit discreetly. In the IT department, an analyst named David Kim, always withdrawn and invisible to most employees, began to notice strange patterns in the company's access logs. An administrative user had logged in at unusual times, always late at night, precisely during the shifts when Helena was on the 48th floor. Although David had never spoken to her, the fact that a cleaning lady was present at the same times as the suspicious entries made him uneasy. Not that he believed she had the technical skills for it, but too many coincidences were drawing attention in times of crisis. He mentally filed away the detail, hesitant. He didn't want to get involved. But he knew Mark was desperate to point the finger at someone, and Mark didn't need proof to destroy someone. Meanwhile, Helena was living her own silent battle. In her small room in Brooklyn, she could barely sleep. Each new shift brought glances, impressions, and comments that left her uneasy. The other two women with whom he shared the apartment, Rosa and Mia, noticed his apprehension. "You look very pale, Helena," said Rosa, sitting on the edge of the bed while they drank instant coffee. "Is something going on at work?" Helena hesitated. She didn't want to burden other people with her problems. "It's just more tense than usual," he replied. "Nothing I'm getting involved in." But Rosa, experienced in reading people, knew that was only half the truth. "Just be careful," he murmured. "Powerful people. When they want to find someone to blame, they don't care who it is." The words kept echoing in Helena's mind long after she left home that night. Back at the company, things only got worse. On Thursday, upon arriving on the 48th floor, Helena found the room filled with directors in dark suits, muffled conversations and piles of documents. Olivia was stiffer than ever, moving with military precision. "Good evening," Helena ventured to say. "Good evening," Olivia replied, without looking directly at her. But when Helena bent down to pick up a cleaning product, she noticed the assistant's quick glance, not an accidental one, but a calculated one. Olivia was watching her every move, and Helena knew it. As she was cleaning the hallway, she heard a door open behind her. Ethan had come out of his office, cell phone in hand. As he passed her, he slowed his pace, albeit discreetly. "It's been difficult, isn't it?" he said in a low voice. Helena looked at him in surprise. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge her situation. "I'm just trying to do my job, sir. I know that." He seemed to want to add something, but Olivia appeared right behind him, calling him to an urgent meeting. Ethan nodded and followed without saying anything more, but the brief pause, the look he exchanged with Helena, spoke louder than words. Someone finally realized that she was in the middle of something she hadn't created. Hours later, near midnight, Helena was putting away her materials when she heard footsteps in the hallway, footsteps she would recognize, Mark's. He stopped in front of the warehouse, his dark eyes illuminated only by the cold light of the hallways. "Working late again, aren't you?" he asked with a wry smile. "Yes, sir," she replied firmly but tense. "You know." Mark stepped forward. "I've been thinking a lot about the night you were near the meeting room. It might not seem like it, but details like that are important." Helena felt a shiver run down her spine. "I didn't hear anything, sir, and I wasn't involved in anything." He tilted his head. "Interesting that you're so concerned about saying that." She took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice steady. "I just want to work, sir. Nothing more." Mark gave a slow smile, like a predator that has just smelled easy prey. "That's exactly why you should be careful. And he left, leaving behind a disguised threat. Time pressure began to mount. Olivia sped up deadlines. David reviewed records with trembling hands. Mark pressured departments. Ethan searched for answers. And Helena tried to weather the storm. Each character, in their own subplot, was moving towards the same point of convergence. The building seemed to breathe unevenly, as if something was about to happen, something that would change everything. Friday began with heavy tensions. The sky over Manhattan was grey, as if announcing that something about to happen inside Vance Corporation was going to spill over and spill outside. Ethan arrived earlier than usual. His impeccable suit and stern expression couldn't hide the deep, dark circles under his eyes. He had slept only 2 hours. He pored over reports, cross-referenced information, made urgent calls, all without finding answers. The internal investigation was intensifying, and the pressure on him was mounting at a dizzying pace. Late the previous afternoon, the internal committee had made it clear, if the culprit wasn't found soon, the responsibility would fall on the CEO who failed to control his own company. In other words, about him. Meanwhile, in a far less prestigious corner of the building, Helena began her shift with the uneasy feeling that the day had a different weight to it. The air seemed thicker. People were restless. Even the automatic doors seemed to open and close more abruptly. Upon entering the hallway on the 48th floor, she realized that something had happened while she was away. The lights were on in every room. Papers were scattered across desks. Computers were on. Folders were open. It was as if a corporate hurricane had swept through. Olivia stood by the phone, her face tense, speaking with surgical precision. "I need this now, understand? Now!" And he hung up without waiting for a reply. When he saw Helena, he took a deep breath and tried to straighten his composure. "Good night." "Good evening, Ma'am." "The night could be long," Olivia murmured, more to herself than to Helena. And it really would be. Around 10:40 p.m., the tensions that had been building finally exploded. Helena was cleaning the hallway when she heard a muffled argument coming from the main meeting room. She hesitated for a moment, but continued her work until the door burst open. Ethan left, followed by 2 directors of the investigative committee. Their tone was curt. "This is unacceptable, Ethan," exclaimed the older man, Director Hargrove. "You're leading this company to disaster." "I already said the reports were manipulated," Ethan insisted. "Someone inside the board has privileged access." "Or someone very close to you," Hargrove retorted. "And your decisions? This recent rapprochement with low-security personnel, it's not exactly professional." Helena froze. The phrase was said intentionally, with venom, with innuendo. Ethan stopped. His whole body tensed. He turned slowly to face the director. "I hope you're not suggesting that a cleaning employee is involved in the leak," he said firmly. "I'm saying you should be more selective about who you share your attention with," Hargrove replied, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A second director nodded. "Vulnerable people will do anything for money, Ethan. Don't underestimate them." Helena felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She shouldn't have heard that. She didn't want to hear it. But there she was, being quoted as if she were a threat, a disposable piece, a nameless face that someone could use to justify a monstrous corporate blunder. Ethan, noticing her presence, looked away for a moment. His eyes met hers, and for an instant, his expression changed. There was something between anger and concern, but he didn't say anything. The directors entered the private elevator, leaving a trail of subtle accusations. And it was then that Ethan, alone in the hallway, finally exhaled the air trapped in his chest. Helena, huddled up, dropped the cleaning cloth without realizing it. Ethan approached with slow steps. "Helena, I'm sorry, sir," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to hear anything. I was just doing my job." "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "None of this has anything to do with you. They're trying to find someone to blame anywhere." Helena lowered her gaze. "They think that I could have done something." "No," The answer came too quickly. Ethan sighed. They're only good at manipulating situations when they're under pressure. But there was something unspoken there. Helena sensed it. Did I interrupt you? She asked, her voice low. No. You didn't interrupt anything. She wanted to believe it, but she couldn't. She knew how powerful people operated. She knew what happened to employees like her when they became suspects, even without reason. And then, before they could continue, the elevator beeped again. Ethan turned around, and his expression changed instantly. Mark stepped out of the elevator as if he had been waiting for that opening. "Look at that," he said dramatically. "The CEO and the cleaning lady having a very convenient conversation." Ethan hardened. "Mark, don't start. Begin." He raised his eyebrows. "I just want to understand why." I was standing right in the hallway where sensitive corporate confidences were being discussed. The tone was accusatory, sharp tongue, calculated. Helena took a step back. "I didn't hear anything. That wasn't my intention." "Of course not," Mark said with a fake smile. "Those employees always say that." Ethan stepped forward, instinctively protecting her, though he didn't touch her. "She has nothing to do with this." "We'll see," Mark replied. "Security will want to ask a few questions. Nothing serious, just protocol. When someone's around. Wrong place, wrong time." Helena felt a throbbing pain in her chest. She had seen this type of situation before. She knew what it meant. Suspicion, interrogation, job loss. Maybe even worse. "That's not going to happen," Ethan said decisively. "It's not up to you right now." Mark gave a cold smile. "You've lost too much control lately," and he left, leaving a heavy silence behind him. Helena breathed with difficulty. "Sir, I don't want any trouble," she murmured, her voice breaking. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, as if analyzing 1,000 decisions at once. "Helena." He spoke in a calm yet firm voice. "From now on, I will take care of this. I promise." She wanted to ask how. She wanted to believe. But her life had never allowed her to easily trust promises, especially those from powerful men. The night went on, but nothing would ever be the same. Because this Friday, the conflict officially began. The following morning arrived like a sentence. The sun rose between the tall buildings of Manhattan, but inside Vance Corporation, the light seemed not to penetrate. It was as if the walls had closed in, swallowing everything in an uncomfortable silence. The kind of silence that heralds storms. Helena arrived for her shift early, too worried to wait for her usual time. Her heart had been pounding since she woke up, and her stomach felt like it was in knots. She knew something was going to happen. Mark wouldn't waste the chance to make her the scapegoat. Upon entering the building, she noticed 2 security guards conversing in hushed voices. Neither of them greeted her. They simply watched her as she passed, as if she were someone who needed to be watched. She looked away, trying to ignore the chill that ran down her spine. On the 48th floor, the atmosphere was even worse. Ethan had been locked in his office since 7 a.m. Olivia paced quickly, carrying folders and reports. There was an air of urgency and fear. When Helena appeared in the hallway, Olivia saw her immediately. The assistant hesitated, as if considering whether to say something, but ended up simply nodding and moving on. Her gaze, however, said it all. Careful. It happened shortly before 10 a.m. 2 members of the internal security team, not regular guards, but corporate-level personnel trained for sensitive situations, appeared on the 48th floor. One of them was holding a clipboard. The other walked with a rigid posture and a serious expression. They stopped directly in front of Helena. "Miss Helena Campos?" asked the one with the clipboard. She swallowed hard. "Like this. We need you to come with us for a few questions. It's standard procedure." The tone was too polished, too professional, the kind of voice that accompanies a protocol with a predetermined outcome. Helena began to tremble. Did I do something wrong? It's just an interview." The second security guard replied, but his face did not convey tranquility. Before she could react, Mark appeared behind the men, adjusting his jacket and with a smile that hurt just to look at. "Good morning, Helena," he said, as if it were perfectly normal to find her about to be taken away. "I saw that my colleagues needed to speak with you. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." Helena sensed the poison in his words, the way he maintained that smile. He didn't want to clarify anything. He wanted to destroy her. I'm just the cleaning lady," she murmured, her voice faltering. "Exactly," Mark replied with a superior air. "And that's why we need to make sure no one is manipulating you. People in your position are, unfortunately, vulnerable." She felt the humiliation burning her face, and then a voice cut through the hallway. "What's going on here?" "Ethan." He emerged with firm steps, his gaze quickly taking in the entire scene. The security guards stood alert. Mark assumed an innocent expression. Ethan walked over to them. "Why are you bringing security guards to question a cleaning lady?" he asked, his voice low but full of authority. "Mr. Vance," said one of the security guards, "we were informed that the employee was present in sensitive areas during times of suspicious access to the company's systems." Helena's eyes widened. "I didn't do anything," she said with genuine despair. Ethan turned immediately to Mark. "You did it," he stated without asking. Mark raised his eyebrows cynically. "I simply reported the facts. If she was there, it's natural to investigate. Or would you prefer to leave loose ends during a crisis like this?" "You're trying to fabricate a culprit," Ethan replied. Mark smiled in an almost amused way. "Whether she's guilty or not, that's not for me to decide. Security is just doing their job." Ethan took a deep breath, holding back his anger like an animal trying to escape. "Helena is not authorized to go anywhere," he said firmly. "Any questions will be asked in my presence, and only after I have reviewed the allegations." The security guards exchanged uneasy glances. Mark tried to intervene. "Ethan, you're being irrational. She might be—" "I told her she's not going anywhere." Ethan's voice echoed in the hallway, cold as ice. The security guards retreated immediately. Mark stood motionless, his eyes squeezed shut, the facade of tranquility beginning to crack. "You're protecting that girl too much," he said, letting the word girl slip out with disdain. "And you're going too far," Ethan retorted. When the security guard stepped back, Helena breathed for the first time in long seconds. Her hands trembled, her throat burned, her eyes were filled with tears that she struggled to hold back. Ethan stood beside her for a moment, saying nothing. He just stared at the floor, as if internally struggling to decide what to do. Finally, he murmured, "Come with me." Helena followed him to his office. As she entered, she closed the door behind her. She stood there, unsure where to put her hands. Ethan took a few steps toward the table, then looked back at her. "Are you well?" She shook her head, and the tears finally streamed down her face. I tried not to get involved. I was just doing my job." Ethan approached, but stopped at a respectful distance. "I know, and that's exactly why it's not going to happen. Mark is using you because he thinks you're defenseless. He thinks no one will protect you." She looked up, surprised, hurt, fragile. "And what about it?" Ethan took a deep breath, as if that question were more important than any multi-million-dollar deal he had ever made in his life. "Yes," he replied, "I will go." An urgent knock on the door interrupted them. Olivia entered, pale. "Ethan, we have a problem, a big one." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if the universe were testing his limits. "What happened?" "They found new suspicious logins, and they're linked to your name." Helena held her breath. The world seemed to stop. Ethan remained motionless. Then, slowly, he opened his eyes. "That's it," Olivia murmured in a deep voice. "They're going to try to knock him down." Helena felt her chest tighten. First they tried to destroy it. Now they were going after him. And at that very moment, the story took its first real turn. The news that the suspicious accesses were linked to Ethan's name spread through the company faster than wildfire. For many, it was just further proof that the internal crisis was deep. For others, it meant that a giant was about to fall. For Ethan, it was something even worse. It meant that someone was inside the company, conspiring silently, and wasn't afraid to strike him directly. Contrary to what Helena feared, Ethan didn't panic, but the way he froze, took a deep breath, and composed himself revealed something she hadn't yet realized. He was used to dealing with chaos, but not with betrayal. "Olivia," he said after a long second, "I want everything. Logs, access records, times, credential changes. Someone is trying to create a false trail, and they need to be very confident to do it using my name." "I'm already pulling everything out," she replied, hurrying out. Ethan then turned to Helena. She was still pale, but there was something different in her eyes. It wasn't fear, it was determination. "You need to go home," he said. "They'll keep trying to involve you in this. I want you out of here for today." Helena denied it immediately. "No, I'm not leaving." He frowned. "Helena, this could get serious, really serious. You have absolutely no obligation to—" "Yes, I do," she interrupted. "I'm not going to let you deal with this alone. They've already tried to blame me. Now they're trying to blame you. I may not understand anything about systems, but I've seen things, I've heard things. I know who hangs out in the hallways. I know who talks to whom. I know when they're lying." Her unexpected conviction made Ethan look at her with bewilderment and respect. It was as if for the first time he truly saw her not as someone vulnerable, but as someone capable of facing this with him. "Helena," he began, trying to be rational. But she interrupted him again, more firmly this time. "You said you would protect me. Now I want to protect you too." It hit him in a strange way, a way he wasn't prepared to understand. Shortly after, Olivia returned with a stack of documents, printed reports, and a tablet with access charts. Ethan and Helena examined everything beside her. The logs showed out-of-hours access, permission changes, and commands executed from machines Ethan had never touched. His credentials had been cloned. Olivia concluded this could only have been done by someone with a high level of access, or someone with physical access to his office. Helena frowned. "Physical access? Like someone entering his office when he's not there?" "Exactly," Olivia said, "and that narrows the list down to very few people." Tensions rose, but Helena did something that surprised them both. "And the cameras? There are no recordings?" Olivia made a bitter expression. "That's exactly the problem. The internal cameras were turned off on the nights of the access operations." Helena felt a shiver. "That's no coincidence," he murmured. Ethan agreed. "Mark is going too far," he added thoughtfully. "He's not just trying to tarnish my reputation. He wants something bigger, control of the company," Olivia suggested. "Perhaps more than that," Ethan replied. Helena watched in silence, absorbing everything. She had never been so involved in something so big, and at the same time, she felt strangely part of it. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, she helped compare schedules, cross-reference information, and review reports. But most importantly, she began to notice details that those two, accustomed to the corporate world, hadn't noticed. For example, "That name always comes up around the same time," she said, pointing to a maintenance technician. Olivia frowned. "I hadn't realized that." "And look," Helena continued, "he only shows up when the system is tampered with. It's as if he's always around the corner." Ethan leaned over to see. "How did you notice that?" "That's what I do," she replied. "I notice who stays where. I notice who shouldn't be in certain places. By cleaning the building, you learn to see who goes by too unnoticed." Ethan exchanged a look with Olivia, impressed. For a moment, something shifted in the atmosphere. The tension was still high, but now there was something else there, a sense of possibility. Helena wasn't a burden in that situation. She was a key player. Late in the afternoon, when all three were exhausted, Ethan decided they needed a break. He called Helena to come down with him to the cafeteria on the ground floor. Olivia stayed behind to review more reports. On the way, Helena reflected on how much her life had changed in such a short time. At first, she only wanted to do her job discreetly. Now, she was facing real risks alongside a millionaire who had been unjustly accused. And despite the fear, something was growing inside her, something she hadn't yet named, but felt clearly: courage. When they arrived at the coffee shop, Ethan ordered 2 coffees and they sat down by the window. The sun was already setting, tinging New York with orange hues. Helena fidgeted with her glass, restless, Ethan realized. "Do you want to talk about what you're thinking?" She hesitated. "You always deal with things like this? People trying to bring you down?" "Not to that extent," he replied, "but I've learned that when you present obstacles to someone who is overly ambitious, you become a target." "And you think Mark is that kind of person?" "I think Mark is exactly that type of person." Helena was silent for a moment. "I'm scared," he confessed. "But I think I'm more scared for you than for myself." Ethan stared at her slowly. There was something in her eyes, something pure, real, that he wasn't used to seeing in the world he lived in. It touched him deeply. "Helena," he said in a low voice, "you didn't have to be here with me today, but you chose to be. That means more than you can imagine." She looked away, embarrassed, but with a small, shy smile. Ethan continued, "And I haven't forgotten what you said, that you wanted to protect me too." She took a deep breath. "And I want to." It was at that moment that a simple fact became evident. They were no longer just a cleaning lady and a CEO. They weren't just 2 people united by a problem. They were truly connected by loyalty, by fear, by courage, by something new that was beginning to blossom, something that would change everything. When they returned to the office, Olivia was waiting for them with a tense expression. "We have something," she said. "Something big." And then, before Helena could ask what it was, Ethan replied, "Let's sort this out. We're in this together now." And she realized he believed in her, and she believed in him. This was how growth began, not just for them as individuals, but for that which united them. A link that would soon be tested to its limit. When they returned to the 48th floor, the atmosphere was no longer the same as hours before. The tension was thicker, heavier, as if each wall of the office carried something about to collapse. The meeting room door was ajar, and Olivia waited in the doorway holding a tablet firmly. "I've discovered something important," she said, directing the 2 of them inside. Helena sat down next to Ethan. The room was silent, lit only by the white lights on the ceiling. The city outside seemed distant, as if it belonged to another reality, one where people didn't try to destroy lives and careers. Olivia placed the tablet on the table. The technician's access logs that Helena identified, that pattern of times, is no coincidence. And furthermore, there are transactions made from an internal server that could only be accessed by someone with special authorization. Ethan frowned. "Internal server?" "Yes, and guess who has direct access?" Olivia turned her face slowly, looking at Ethan. "Mark." The confirmation hung over them like a silent thunderclap. Helena felt breathless for a moment. She already suspected it, but hearing it said aloud made everything more dangerous and real. Ethan rested his hands on the table, leaning forward to observe the data Olivia was displaying. His eyes narrowed. "So he cloned my credentials, manipulated the cameras, messed with the internal servers. And they even used third parties to cover their tracks," Olivia added. "But they left flaws, small ones, but enough to expose the pattern." Helena took a deep breath. Each piece fit together like a grim jigsaw puzzle. "He wants to destroy you," she said, her voice low. Ethan did not deny it. "Not only that, he wants to take over the company completely before the board realizes he's behind everything." Olivia crossed her arms. "And the worst part is that he won't stop. Now that he knows he couldn't blame Helena and that you're suspicious of him, he's going to speed up the plan." A sense of urgency filled the air. Ethan stood up, pacing back and forth as if he were devising an invisible strategy. "We need to anticipate this," he said. "More than that, we need irrefutable proof." "And how are we going to achieve that?" Helena asked. "He's already tampered with cameras once." Olivia smiled slightly. "That's where the good part comes in. He thinks he's in control, and when someone believes they're winning, they let their guard down." Ethan stopped immediately. "What are you suggesting?" "A trap," Olivia replied. "If he's making illegal moves, he needs to act again to push you out of the position, especially now that he's at a disadvantage." Helena understood slowly. "You want to make him think he has a chance to continue?" "Exactly," Olivia added, "while we monitor everything in real time, without the previous glitches, with records he can't manipulate." Ethan considered the idea. "The risk is enormous," he said. "He might try something even more aggressive." "And that's exactly why we need to act now," Olivia insisted. Helena watched the two of them. There was a war about to erupt, corporate, silent, strategic, but one that had profound consequences for every life involved, and she was at the center of it, whether she wanted to be or not. "I want to help," she said suddenly. They both turned to look. "Helena," Ethan said protectively, "this could get too dangerous. He's capable of anything." "Precisely for that reason," she replied firmly. "He doesn't expect me to be part of the plan. He thinks I'm irrelevant, invisible. That's what makes me useful." Ethan remained silent for a few moments. Olivia nodded. "She's right. Mark wouldn't pay attention to her. She's exactly the kind of piece she can observe without being observed." Helena looked away for a moment. She didn't like being seen as invisible, but she understood that this time it was an advantage. Ethan took a deep breath, weighing the risks, possibilities, and threats. "All right," he said finally. "Helena will help, but I won't put her in direct danger. She'll only do what's necessary to identify movements. Nothing more." She nodded. "I understood." Olivia opened a digital map of the building. "Here. These are the areas Mark accessed during the recent incidents. We need to especially monitor this server room and this technical room. The outsourced team passes through these areas frequently." Helena looked down the corridors, trying to memorize them. "I clean those areas 3 times a week. No one will find it strange to see me there." Ethan watched her with a mixture of pride and concern. There was something new about him, something that had only appeared after everything they had faced together. A silent connection. They were more united than ever. As they organized the plan, night fell over New York. The city lights came on one by one, transforming the skyline into a sea of lights. Inside, however, the feeling was that they were in a trench about to be invaded. The entire narrative structure pointed to something bigger, inevitable, about to happen. A confrontation that could no longer be postponed. Helena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility, and at the same time, something unexpected. Strength. Ethan walked over to her before they called it a day. "I never thought I could trust someone so much," he said with absolute sincerity. Helena stared at him. "Me neither," he replied. And there, amidst data, plans, and risks, something silent solidified. It was no longer just strategy. It was a link. It was loyalty. It was the prelude to a climax that promised to turn everything upside down. Dawn had broken over in New York when Helena entered the 48th floor for her special shift. The building was too quiet. The kind of silence that isn't natural, but rather built up by the tension preceding something big. She straightened her uniform, took a deep breath, and pushed the cleaning cart down the hallway leading to the server room. With each step, she felt her heart pounding, as if anticipating what was about to happen. Olivia was observing everything from the makeshift control center she had set up in one of the offices. Ethan, at home, monitored the data remotely, his eyes fixed on the screens, unable to stay still, his body stiff with anxiety. "Helena!" Olivia's voice echoed through her earpiece. "He just went through the turnstile on the 46th floor. He's going up." Helena stopped immediately. "Is he coming here?" "Come," Olivia confirmed, "and alone." Helena swallowed hard. That was it. The trap had finally been set. She continued walking slowly, trying to appear natural. She wiped one of the doors, checked the floor, opened a cupboard. Automatic movements that her mind made effortlessly when her body was filled with adrenaline. Then the elevator made a small ding, and Helena felt her blood run cold. The door opened slowly, revealing Mark, dark suit, impassive expression, sharp gaze. He hadn't expected to find anyone there so late, much less her. His eyes narrowed. "You?" he asked, with a cold smile. "On this floor again?" Helena smiled, feigning nonchalance. "Work is work." But Mark took a step forward. Something in his expression was different from his usual calculated arrogance. This was pure threat. "Curious," he said. "You always show up where you shouldn't." Olivia spoke at the point. "Keep him talking. Any sudden movement, and I'll call security." But before Helena could answer, Mark walked over to her cart and lifted the cleaning cloth. He rummaged through it roughly. "Looking for something?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Mark stared at her with a look that would make anyone recoil. "I have a feeling you know more than you should." He took another step, and Helena sensed the shadow of danger in the movement. The hallway was deserted. She was alone with him, and Mark was getting closer and closer. That's when he saw the small black dot discreetly stuck in the pocket of her apron, a micro camera. The world froze. "What is that?" he growled. Helena took a step back. "From the company," he lied, "monitoring." But Mark no longer believed in anything. He stepped forward and, in a brutal movement, snatched the camera from his pocket. "You are spying on me." Helena tried to run down the hallway, but his arm held her tightly. She slammed against the wall, the impact eliciting a groan. "Olivia," Helena whispered into the earpiece. "He found out." "Hold on, security is on the way," Olivia replied, her voice choked with panic. But Mark ripped the earpiece out of her ear and crushed it with his foot. "Do you really think you can stop me?" he asked, moving even closer. Helena's breathing quickened. She tried to push him away, but Mark grabbed both her wrists with one hand, pinning her against the wall. "Do you know what the problem is with people like you?" he said, spitting the words out with contempt. "You don't know your place." Helena's eyes widened, not in fear, but in fury. She raised her knee and struck his leg with all her might. Mark yelled, letting go of her for a second, enough time for Helena to run. "Go, Helena!" Ethan shouted from the other side of the system, listening to everything through the microphone in Olivia's room. Helena ran down the hallway, knocking over the cart behind her to slow him down. She felt the air burning her lungs as she entered the server room and locked the door from the inside. But Mark punched violently from the other side. "Open this door!" The lock rattled. Helena stepped back, searching for something, anything, to defend herself with. She found only boxes, cables, and a broken broom, and a lit screen. The system was recording everything. It was proof. Mark burst in like a bang. The door flew open after a final kick. He lunged at Helena, knocking over equipment. She ran to the other side of the room, trying to reach the control panel to send the files in time. But Mark grabbed her arm and threw her to the ground. Helena's head hit the metal floor. The world spun. "You ruined everything," he hissed, grabbing a screwdriver from the counter. "And now you're going to pay for it." Helena crawled backward, dizzy, but aware of one thing. No one would arrive in time if she didn't fight. She saw the maintenance cart that someone had left there, a heavy toolbox on wheels. Mark picked up the screwdriver, and Helena pushed the box with all her might. The cart slid and struck his legs. Mark fell, the tool flying from his hand. He roared in pain. Helena ran to the terminal, clicking desperately, sending files 2%. Mark stood up, limping, his face contorted with pure hatred. "I'm going to finish you off." Helena pressed another button. 9%. Mark moved forward again, faster this time. She turned and grabbed the loose metal support bar. As he approached, she struck him in the shoulder. He screamed, but kept walking. 19%. He grabbed her arm, twisting it. Helena screamed. 40%. She head-butted him in the forehead. Mark staggered. 72%. He lunged at her, knocking them both to the ground. His body pressed against hers, and Helena struggled to breathe. And then someone appeared at the door. "Helena!" Era Ethan. He ran, snatching Mark off of her and throwing him against the table. Mark stood up, unsteady on his feet. Ethan stepped forward. The two clashed forcefully. Mark trying to land blows, Ethan dodging, receiving some, returning others. It was brutal, uncontrolled. Helena, trembling, dragged herself to the screen. 97%. And he pressed enter. The shipment was completed. The police entered seconds later. Mark was pinned to the ground, his eyes filled with hatred and defeat. Helena fell back down, breathless, her whole body trembling. Ethan ran to her, cupping her face in his hands. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice breaking. Helena found the strength to smile despite the pain. "I did it," he whispered, and Ethan hugged her, as if he would never let her go again. The server room seemed smaller after everything. The police officers circulated through the space, collecting evidence, taking photographs, asking quick questions. The tension still hung in the air, but now there was something new there. Relief. Ethan was kneeling beside Helena, holding her hand firmly. His gaze, hardened by days of suspicion, was now filled with something deeper. Gratitude, concern, and something that went beyond the professional. "Let's take her to the building's infirmary," said one of the security guards. Helena tried to stand up, but her legs gave way. Ethan immediately caught her. "I'll take care of her," he replied firmly. Olivia arrived a few seconds later, breathless, her face still pale from the fright. "Helena, my God, you're—" She stopped short when she saw her conscious. "You saved everything. You really saved everything." Helena tried to smile, but the pain throbbed in various parts of her body. "I only did what needed to be done." Olivia laughed nervously, relieved. He did more than that. In the hallway, as they led her to the infirmary, Helena felt each step as a victory. She passed the same places where she had previously been ignored, by the executives who never looked at her, by the employees who barely noticed her presence. Now everyone stared at her, some surprised, others guilty, others curious, but no one saw her as invisible anymore. In the infirmary, she received prompt treatment, nothing broken but bruises, scratches, and a mild concussion. When the doctor left, Ethan approached, pulled up a chair, and sat down beside the bed. "You could have died," he said, his voice low. Helena took a deep breath. "I knew what I was getting myself into." Ethan shook his head, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of frustration and excitement. "I should have been here from the beginning." Helena looked at him with unexpected serenity. If you had been there, Mark would have run away. That's what he expected, that no one would dare confront him. He ran his hand through his hair nervously. "Even so." He looked at her intently. "I never want to see you like this again." Helena felt her chest warm. There was something in the way he looked at her, something that had changed since he found her collapsed on the server room floor. "I'm fine," she said, lightly touching his arm. The touch made Ethan take a deep breath, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Hours later, as dawn was breaking, the building was different. News of Mark's arrest had spread. There were conversations in the hallways, attentive glances, murmurs about scandal, headlines, board meetings, and responsibilities. But at the heart of it all was a truth. Ethan was clean. All the accusations had crumbled. And that only happened because Helena, the simple cleaning lady, dared to confront someone dangerous enough to destroy careers and lives. Ethan found her again in his office, calling her before she left. "Helena, wait." She stopped at the door, tired but alert. He walked towards her more slowly than usual, as if each step were being measured. "There's a board meeting in 2 hours," he said. "They want explanations." And I want you to be there. Helena's eyes widened. Me? Ethan, I don't belong there. He took a step forward. Yes, you belong. They need to hear your voice. They need to understand that you were the essential piece in preventing everything from falling apart. Helena hesitated. They don't even know my name. Ethan smiled gently, almost proudly. They'll find out. She felt something stir inside, a mixture of fear and empowerment. Perhaps for the first time in her life, she wasn't just someone who cleaned surfaces, she was someone who could change structures. I'll think about it, she replied with a shy smile. Ethan nodded. Think about it, and then tell me. But first, he took a deep breath. There's something I need to thank you for. Helena looked up. For what reason? He moved a little closer, his voice low, almost intimate. For not giving up on me, for believing in me when no one else did. For risking your life, for the truth. Helena swallowed hard. I trusted you because I saw who you are. The sentence hung between them, intense, profound, laden with something they both felt but hadn't yet named. Ethan gently touched her hand. I will never forget this. Never. The two stood there for a few seconds that seemed too long and significant to be merely formal, until Olivia entered without knocking. Excuse me for interrupting, but... She looked at Helena, smiling. There's someone downstairs who wants to speak with you. A group of employees. Helena frowned. Employees? Why? Because in a way, you've become a hero in here. Helena felt her heart race. Heroine. A word she never imagined hearing directed at her. And Ethan finished in a soft voice. You deserve this. Much more than you can imagine. Helena took a deep breath, sensing that something enormous had changed, not just in the company, but within herself. She was no longer invisible, and for the first time in his life, he was beginning to discover who he really was. The morning was just beginning when Helena stepped off the elevator on the ground floor. The soft light filtering through the enormous glass walls of the reception area created a golden glow she had never noticed before. Perhaps because, until that night, she had never truly felt part of that place, that world of concrete pressure and ambition that had always seemed to exist parallel to her simple life. But now, everything was different. A group of employees gathered at the foot of the central staircase. People who, until a few days ago, would have passed by without seeing her. People who were now whispering her name. When she approached, the murmuring ceased, and a woman from the IT team stepped forward. Helena, right? He asked, smiling. Yes, she replied shyly, unsure how to react. The woman glanced quickly at the others. We wanted to thank you for what you did. If Mark had managed to erase everything, half of us would have lost our jobs. We would all have been accused of incompetence. You saved not only the company, but us too. A brief silence fell, until someone began to clap. Then another, and another. In seconds, the whole group was applauding, not out of obligation, not out of politeness, but with genuine appreciation. Helena stood motionless, feeling tears pressing against her eyes. No one had ever applauded her. Never. At that moment, it was as if the world had finally turned to see her. Thank you, she managed to say, overcome with emotion. I only did what I felt I needed to do. Sometimes, someone replied from the back, heroes do exactly that. When the group dispersed, Helena was left alone for a few minutes, trying to organize the avalanche of feelings that overwhelmed her. She was about to leave when she heard footsteps behind her. You left that up there. She turned and found Ethan holding her simple jacket, the one she always left hanging in the staff locker. He offered it to her with a smile that seemed lighter than any he'd given since it all began. Thank you, she said, taking the jacket. Are you ready? He asked. Helena frowned. Ready for what? Ethan took a deep breath, as if he had rehearsed that line several times. For the board meeting. They want to hear your side of the story and... He hesitated. I want you there. By my side. Helena lowered her gaze. Ethan, I don't know if I belong in that environment. You belong more than you realize, he replied firmly. Besides, belonging isn't something they give you. It's something you earn, and you earned it with courage. Helena felt an unexpected warmth rise in her chest. She had never sought recognition, but now, in the presence of someone she deeply respected, it meant more than she could admit. I'm still deciding, she said honestly. Ethan nodded respectfully. Okay, but in the meantime... He held out a small, folded sheet of paper. A document? No. A letter. What is that? She asked. One request, he replied. Read it when you're ready. Helena carefully picked up the envelope without opening it. She put it in the inside pocket of her jacket, feeling her heart beat faster. Thank you, she said softly. Ethan stepped forward, and for a moment she thought he would embrace her. And perhaps he was about to, but he held back, offering only a look laden with something she wasn't prepared to decipher. See you up there, if you decide to go. Helena nodded without promising anything. He went upstairs and she stood there alone for a few seconds. Only then, when she felt that no one was watching her, did she open the envelope. It was a proposal, not a romantic one, not yet, but something as unexpected as an electric shock running down her spine. Executive training program, special training, personal recommendation, Ethan Cole. On the back, there was only one handwritten sentence. I see something in you that perhaps you yourself don't yet see. E. Helena covered her mouth with her hand, trying to stifle the impact. Perhaps it wasn't the end of the story. Perhaps it was the beginning. With the letter still in her hand, she looked at the stairs that led to the world she never believed she belonged to. And, for the first time, he seriously considered going up. If Helena's journey touched you, moved you, or made you see strength where no one else does, share this story with someone who also needs to remember. Courage can be born in the most unlikely places. Comment on what surprised you the most, which moment captivated you, and what you believe would happen to Helena from here on out. Stories come alive when they are read, discussed, and felt. If this inspired you, show it to the world. And if you want to keep up with Helena and Ethan's next steps and everything that might still happen, just ask.